So I'm going to go ahead and just give it over to Lori.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday's COVID-19 Resources and Update session. I am Lori McGowan. I am your PNRC Treasurer, and I am also the CFO Deputy Director of the Spokane Housing Authority. I am also a member of the PNRC Conference Planning Committee. I really didn't talk to Cupid or Sunny or anyone about what I was going to say this morning. But after the last session we just had, I really think this is a safe space. Last fall when the committee was coming up with the conference theme, which is 2020 Vision for Sustaining Housing Opportunity, it had a very different meaning to me. I thought vision was about looking to the future, having a plan to obtain a goal. What is our vision? Then 2020 hit. And the meaning of the word vision changed for me. I realized that the word vision is also about looking at the here and now and the past and really seeing with acuity what is going on around me. So the word acuity, awareness, sharpness, or keenness of thought, being able to look deep into myself, into others, and into my community and say, I see you, I hear you. My experiences and struggles are not the same as yours, but I want you to know that even though I may not walk in your shoes, I'm willing to learn and to understand. I'm seeing you with 2020 vision. I know we are all having to adapt to a new reality of the world that's around us. As someone said yesterday in one of our sessions, we are learning new ways to do our jobs differently. We are learning new ways to communicate, new ways to connect, new ways to engage with our communities and with each other. We are rethinking our policies in light of social injustices and social distancing. We're looking for new ways to further our missions of sustaining housing opportunities for everyone in our communities. So for everyone participating in this virtual conference and taking the time to engage and learn and grow together and rethinking the word, what's the meaning of the word of vision? Whether you're a caseworker, a property manager, a maintenance person, a receptionist, an executive director, or a finance person, you're all housing heroes to me. And as Sunny would say, housing warriors. So I really appreciate that everyone is here today. Okay, enough gushing for me. I'm here to do a job, and that is to introduce our speaker for today's session. It is my great honor to introduce Senator Patty Murray. In 1992, Patty Murray introduced herself as just a mom with tennis shoes and became the first woman from Washington elected to the U.S. Senate. Senator Murray currently serves as the ranking member of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pension, and is a senior member of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Budget Committees. Senator Murray's experience as a preschool teacher, school board member, and state lawmaker have shaped her legislative interest in Congress and led to multiple successes negotiating across the aisle. Welcome, Senator Murray.
Well, Lori, thank you so much for that introduction, but thank you for your opening statement as well. That was really heartfelt and touching, and I think all of us identify with how we look at the world around us, both from our own eyes and trying to look at it from others as well. So thank you for starting us off with that. And let me also extend my sincere gratitude to everyone on this call for all the work you and your organizations are doing during this extremely difficult time. I am so inspired by your efforts to help the most vulnerable in our communities, and I want you to know I'm very focused on making sure the federal government does its part when it comes to addressing this housing crisis. Washington State was already facing a severe housing and homelessness crisis before COVID-19 hit. And the pandemic has only exacerbated the urgency of the situation here and across the country, especially for Black families and people of color who already face disadvantages because of our nation's long legacy of racial injustice. Over the past few months, I have talked to housing and homelessness providers across Washington state who are really sounding the alarm for additional federal assistance in order to help keep people healthy and safe during this pandemic. I've heard heartbreaking stories from families who lost their jobs and are anxiously trying to figure out how they're going to pay their rent. We've already seen that housing insecurity and homelessness puts people at greater risk when it comes to COVID-19. And so ensuring individuals and families are able to keep a roof over their heads has to be one of our most important public health priorities during this pandemic. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem Senate Republicans understand yet just how pressing and dire this situation is for so many people. The CARES Act provided a critical lifeline for many earlier this year. But the fact that Republicans have dragged their feet for months now when we could have been negotiating on the next COVID-19 relief package is absolutely frustrating and shameful. And every additional hour they spend delaying is wasted time. We could be instead working together on a real bill that could be signed into law. So you can all bet I am as committed as ever to fighting for essential housing assistance in the next bill, starting with $100 billion in rental assistance and a uniform nationwide eviction moratorium, and $75 billion in mortgage assistance and targeted foreclosure prevention. We need to also provide $700 million for housing counseling assistance grants, which, as you know, provide a critical service to help our communities navigate the current economic recession. And we need an additional $11.5 billion for emergency solutions grants, which is an essential lifeline for people experiencing homelessness, to provide the necessary resources for our homeless service providers. I'm also focused on making sure our public housing authorities who've stepped up to provide higher rent subsidies for those with lost or reduced income, and to conduct frequent cleaning of housing units and get the assistance they need during the pandemic. Lastly, we have to look beyond short-term solutions and use this crisis as an opportunity to tackle the bigger challenges in access to affordable housing, whether it's through incremental vouchers or increased investments in programs with proven track records like CDBG, Home, Section 8, or the needed expansion of the low-income housing tax credit program, just to name a few. But ensuring that our struggling families across the country get the assistance they need is not going to be easy. The Republican majority in the Senate has neglected to include any housing assistance in the relief bills they've proposed. And the Trump administration seems more focused on rolling back bedrock fair housing rules and allowing discrimination in shelters on the basis of gender identity than on ensuring that Americans are able to stay in their homes during this crisis. But in spite of all that, I want you all to know you will always have a partner with me in the Senate, and I will continue fighting to get you and your organizations the assistance you need to support families and communities through this pandemic and to put forth long-term housing solutions. We've got to use this opportunity to come back better than before, because we all know the housing crisis in this country will not end with this pandemic, and we cannot just go back to the way things were. So I really want to thank the Pacific Northwest Regional Council for the chance to talk with all of you today, but thank you mostly for all of your incredible hard work. I want all of you to know I'm really thinking about all of you and your families and your staff and your clients as all of us do what we can to slow the spread of this virus and to keep our communities safe. So with that, Lori, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Senator Murray. We really appreciate you taking the time to address us today. I know how busy you are, but we really, really appreciate you taking this time. We do have a couple questions, not necessarily COVID related, but some that were submitted to us earlier. What we're going to do is for our attendees, they can actually submit questions in chat, and we're going to document them, take them down, and we're going to go ahead and send it to you after the fact so that you could provide some type of written response so we could share it in our newsletter maybe next month.
I'm happy to do that, Lori. Yeah, thank you.
Great. So the questions that we have is, what actions have you taken to uphold voting rights for everyone in November?
Such an important question. You know, we need to preserve and protect all options for voters, especially for our voters with disabilities and other communities with less access to the Postal Service. And that includes extending early voting, increasing the number of ballot drop boxes, and just other common sense reforms that Washington State long ago adopted. I was really glad we were able to procure $400 million in federal funds in the CARES Act to help states secure our elections. And as you know, I've co-sponsored legislation. Senator Klobuchar and Wyden wrote to expand vote by mail in every state before November. But we've got to do more, especially as President Trump has blatantly attacked Americans' ability to safely vote by mail this fall. As you know, I've been very vocal in my opposition to the president's assaults on our democracy and on our Postal Service. And I joined my Democratic colleagues in the Senate multiple times in the past few weeks to demand a stop to the disruptions at USPS. I'm also working, by the way, to secure additional funding for the Postal Service in the next relief package, starting with the provisions that were included in the House-passed HEROES Act, and that will provide $25 billion in additional federal funding for USPS. So we are working on that right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I know that it's in the forefront of many of our minds.
Yeah.
Second question I have is, again, it's regarding one of the president's recent executive orders, specifically relating to the payroll tax deferrals. Many of us as employers were gearing up to put that in place. And we have to make the decision as to whether we're going to offer this or not. And in my opinion, it could be extremely detrimental to both the employee and the Social Security, especially if they have to repay that tax next year. So what are your thoughts on this? And are there any actions occurring in the Senate regarding that executive order?
Well, this is an issue that is really distressing for me too, and we should have never gotten to this point where the president is taking this kind of short-sighted unilateral action. You know, actually the time for President Trump and Senate Republicans to begin working on Congress's next response to this harmful crisis that's impacted every family and community was back in May, after the House Democrats passed the HEROES Act. And people here in Washington were saying Congress has to do more to help them weather this storm. Well, here we are months later. The health and economic impacts of the pandemic have deepened across the country, and none of President Trump's piecemeal proposals, including this one, do nearly enough to respond to the depths of this crisis and meet this moment. And in fact, they do the opposite. This proposal would gut funding for Social Security. It would slash critical unemployment benefits. It would siphon needed disaster relief funds. So I am deeply worried, and I'm still waiting for Republicans now to come to the table with a meaningful proposal that will actually provide the critical assistance and support families and communities and small businesses across our state. I know you and many people are trying to figure out whether or not this is going to be implemented, and it is so frustrating to see this action that will be so harmful. And I'm hoping that the Senate Republicans will come to the table, give us a serious proposal so we can act in a responsible way.
Thank you, Senator Murray. We know you're the person to work across that aisle and make it happen. So with that, I know you are a very busy person. We appreciate having you here today. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Okay, all of you too. And please take care of yourselves and your families. Thank you.